Charge to Pope Francis, saying he had always been on the side of the most vulnerable and the most fragile and fought for more justice. Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof says Pope Francis was in every way a man of the people. European Parliament President Roberta Metsola says his contagious smile captured millions of people's hearts across the globe. Israeli President Isaac Herzog hails his boundless compassion. Swiss President Karin Keller-Sutter says Pope Francis was a great spiritual leader, a tireless advocate for peace. Scottish First Minister John Swinney describes him as a voice for peace, tolerance and reconciliation. Joshua Barnes is joining us once again for some updates. Joshua, what updates have you got for us?
Yes, absolutely, Thomas. We have been looking through X, formerly known as Twitter, to get some of the latest reactions coming in from world leaders. I want to start off again with the statement that we received from Cardinal Kevin Farrell a short while ago. I won't read through the whole thing as it's on screen, but just to give you a broader update, of course, deep sorrow amongst the 1 billion Roman Catholics across the world, detailing the death at 7:35 this morning of Pope Francis. The message, I'll read out the last line: "We commend the soul of Pope Francis to the infinite, merciful love of the one and triune God." That, of course, the message, the official statement coming from the Vatican confirming the death of Pope Francis at the age of 88. We'll move on now to some global reactions. We are, of course, here in New Delhi, starting with Narendra Modi, who first has posted some pictures of a moment in which he met with Pope Francis. The tribute is a long one, the tribute is a sincere one. Deeply pained by the passing of His Holiness Pope Francis in this hour of grief and remembrance. My heartfelt condolences to the global Catholic community. Again, talking about the meeting later in this message, I fondly recall my meetings with him and was greatly inspired by his commitment to inclusive and all-round development. His affection for the people of India will always be cherished. May his soul find eternal peace in God's embrace. We'll move on now to JD Vance, of course, here in India, the final world leader to meet with Pope Francis as far as we are aware, meeting with him yesterday at that Sunday service in the Vatican. This posted minutes ago. JD Vance here talking about him learning of the passing of Pope Francis, saying his heart goes out to the millions of Christians all over the world. He talks about that meeting. "I was happy to see him yesterday, though he was obviously very ill, but I'll always remember him for the below homily he gave in the very early days of COVID. It was really quite beautiful. May God rest his soul." Of course, JD Vance as well, a devout Roman Catholic, and that meeting taking place yesterday. European leaders as well reacting to this news of Pope Francis's death and his passing. From Buenos Aires to Rome, this from Emmanuel Macron. Pope Francis wanted the Church to bring joy and hope to the poorest, that it unite men with each other and with nature. May this hope continually rise again beyond him. To all Catholics, to the grieving world, we send, with my wife, our thoughts. We'll have a look down at the picture as well that we can see here. Emmanuel Macron, his wife, with Pope Francis. These updates all coming in within the last half an hour. Ursula von der Leyen, chief of the European Union. Today the world mourns the passing of Pope Francis. He inspired millions far beyond the Catholic Church with his humility and love so pure for the less fortunate. Of course, around 1 billion Christians across the world, but as we've mentioned, this death will be felt across the world, given Pope Francis's position at the head of the Church, but also the importance on religion and faith that Pope Francis devoted his life to, as many of these paying tribute to him have said. We'll go back to Ursula von der Leyen's comments. My thoughts are with all who feel this profound loss. May they find solace in the idea that Pope Francis's legacy will continue to guide us all towards a more just, peaceful and compassionate world. We continue to move on. We next have Roberta Metsola. Europe mourns the passing of His Holiness Pope Francis. His contagious smile captured millions of people's hearts across the globe. The People's Pope will be remembered for his love for life, hope for peace, compassion for equality and social justice. May he rest in peace. Michael Martin, of course, I apologise, I didn't mention previously a European official, Roberta there. Michael Martin, an Irish politician. It is with profound sadness that the world has learnt of the passing of His Holiness Pope Francis. And then we have a statement here. Of course, many nations are traditional Catholic nations, traditional Christian nations. Ireland, one of those. Really a period of mourning for many countries across the globe. We continue to move on. John Swinney, First Minister of Scotland. It is with deep sadness I heard the news this morning of the death of Pope Francis. He was a voice for peace, tolerance and reconciliation in our society. He brought comfort, assurance and hope to many. May he rest in peace. While we're on John Swinney, King Charles III, of course the King of Britain, the United Kingdom, he has also made a statement, not the one that we see on screen, but King Charles was speaking about his visit to the Vatican in 2009 and also sharing his condolences as well. Staying in Europe, Friedrich Merz, the death of Pope Francis fills me with great sorrow. Francis will be remembered for his tireless commitments to the weakest in society, for justice and reconciliation. These phrases, these sentiments being shared among world leaders. Francis, of course, spoke out about humanitarian issues across the world, speaking out about conflicts taking place across the world and always pushing forward humanity. He tackled issues within the church. He spoke about LGBTQ+ within the church as well. So Francis will be remembered as a pope who really pushed the boundaries but was supported by almost everyone within the church, despite being progressive, despite pushing humanitarianism, despite moving forward. He was always supported by the church. Let's move on now. Isaac Herzog, President of Israel. I extend my deepest condolences to the Christian citizens of Israel, to the Christian communities in the Holy Land, and to the entire Christian world on the loss of their spiritual father, Pope Francis. Looking at the end of this message, I hope that his prayers for peace in the Middle East and for a return of the hostages will soon be answered. May his memory continue to inspire acts of kindness, unity and hope. And that kindness, that unity, that push for humanitarian returns, with wars ongoing in a fractious world that we currently live in, with disputes, with trade tensions, with fighting, with humanitarian crises. Pope Francis always spoke out against those issues and was always in support of humanity. We move on finally to Dick Schoof, who is the Dutch leader. Pope Francis was in every way a man of the people. The global Catholic community bids farewell to a leader who recognised the burning issues of our day and called attention to them with his sober way of life, acts of service and compassion. Pope Francis was a role model for many, Catholics and non-Catholics alike. We remember him with great respect. The messages there are clear. This is mourning now for around 1 billion Christians and Catholics across the world, but this death will be felt across the world. Pope Francis's efforts for those Catholic and non-Catholic will be remembered after his death this morning.
Well, Joshua, thank you very much for joining us. If you're just tuning in, we are covering the death of Pope Francis, who has just been announced dead by the Vatican at the age of 88 years old. This comes just a day after he made his final public appearance at St. Peter's Square, which you are seeing live visuals of now on Easter Sunday. We obviously are currently on Easter Monday, and we are covering world reactions to the death of the head of the Catholic Church, a church that's home to over 1 billion people worldwide. We are covering world reactions, one of which being the Church of England's acting head of state, who has also paid tribute. The Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, who is the acting head of the Church of England, has reacted to the Pope's death, who the pair met previously in 2023, who have said that we saw compellingly in Francis's service of the poor, his love of the neighbour, especially the displaced migrant, the asylum seeker, his deep compassion for the well-being of the earth, and his desire to lead and build the church in new ways. Francis showed us how to follow Jesus and encouraged us to go and do likewise in their community and focus on those margins, those actions. His whole life was instantly recognizable as those of one who followed Jesus. That was the Archbishop Cottrell of York, the acting head of the Church of England. We will now go on to the Pope's final message, who says, no freedom of religion, thought, no peace without freedom of religion, thought and expression. We want to give you a bit of background about Pope Francis, who was born as Jorge Mario Bergoglio. He was born in Buenos Aires in 1936 to Italian immigrants to Argentina, and he made history as the first Latin American and Jesuit Pope. Taking the name Francis, he quickly became known as a modernizer within the Catholic Church. From the start, Pope Francis brought a more open and compassionate tone to the papacy. Speaking out strongly on global issues like war, climate change and migration, he pushed for reforms inside the church, challenging elitism among the clergy and calling for a more inclusive approach to the divorced and LGBTQ Catholics. He took significant steps to clean up financial corruption within the Vatican and introduced laws holding bishops accountable for covering up sexual abuse. He also widened the role of women in the Vatican and allowed priests to bless same-sex couples. Francis worked to strengthen ties with the Muslim world and positioned himself as a global peacemaker, especially in conflict zones like Ukraine and like the Middle East. But, however, his papacy wasn't without challenges. Ultra-conservatives within the church resisted his reforms, while some progressive Catholics believed he didn't go far enough, particularly on issues like priestly celibacy, homosexuality, and women in the ministry. And despite firm action, Pope Francis could not fully eliminate the deep-rooted scandal of clerical abuse, an issue he vowed to confront, but one that continued to cast a long shadow over the church throughout his tenure. If you're joining us, as you can see, these live visuals are St. Peter's Square, at the centre of the Vatican, where you can see people gathering, mourners gathering, at the centre of the Catholic Church. Tributes are pouring in from world leaders, including Italy's Giorgia Meloni, who says about the Pope's death that a great man has left us, she says. French President Emmanuel Macron paid homage to Pope Francis, saying he had always been on the side of the most vulnerable and the most fragile and fought for more justice. Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof says Pope Francis was in every way a man of the people. European Parliament President Roberta Metsola says his contagious smile captured millions of people's hearts across the globe. And Israeli President Isaac Herzog hails his boundless compassion. Swiss President Karin Keller-Sutter says Pope Francis was a great spiritual leader, a tireless advocate for peace. Scottish First Minister John Swinney, the head of the SNP, describes him as a voice for peace, tolerance and reconciliation. If you are joining us, we are covering Pope Francis's death, who died at the age of 88 at 7:35 this very morning. The Pope was the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, and he died today on Easter Monday, one of the major festivals in the Christian calendar. His death obviously comes a day after he appeared in public on Easter Sunday, the most important date in the Christian calendar. He was recently discharged from hospital last month after 5 weeks of treatment for an infection. He had bronchitis, which then turned into pneumonia, double pneumonia. He was then discharged, and after making a brief public appearance, he was prescribed rest by his doctor. Obviously, his respiratory issue